From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I am your host, Patrick Berry, and we are here in the 22 News Plus studios. Everybody loves a vacation. It has so many health benefits to maintaining your stress level and enjoying time with your family and your friends. But sometimes it can be hard to go on vacation. I'm so lucky today to be joined in the 22 News Plus studio with Sara Hulseberg. She is a travel specialist with the organization We Do Travel Right. And today we're talking about getting away. Sara, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. Everybody loves a vacation. Who doesn't love a vacation, right? Whether it's camping in the White Mountains or here in the Western Mass or international travel, everybody loves to get away. How much planning should people put into any trip? If you're sitting there on a Friday afternoon and you say, all right, I want to go away, is that too late?
What, to leave on Saturday?
Yeah.
It depends on who you are. I've done it. It depends on your personality, honestly, truly. Any type of travel typically requires a good amount of planning. The very least, you need to know what your transportation is going to be, and you need to know where you're going to stay, ideally. Granted, I have absolutely been that person in my early 20s where I took a train somewhere and found where I was staying once I was there. But is that something I would recommend doing with your family in tow? No.
As a single person, that spontaneity is great.
Yeah.
Because, hey, where's this train going to take me?
Yeah. But if you're traveling with another person or your family, the more people you're with, the more planning it's going to take. And some people like doing that planning for themselves. They enjoy the process of going through the tedium of learning about where they're going, what they want to be doing. Other people don't really want to do that, and they want somebody else to do that for them. That's where people like me come in.
Well, that's sort of my next question is, and travel planning can get overwhelming, even if you like to do it, or even if you don't mind doing it. I don't know if I'd say like to do it, but even if you don't mind doing it, especially if you're doing a big trip. And when I say big trip, it might be, I'm going to the Grand Canyon. It's where to stay, what to do. Sedona's nearby. Phoenix is nearby. There are other national parks nearby. This is where having someone like you who has the knowledge base of options comes into play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that I see it is if you can't get home within a single drive, a doable drive, any trip is a big trip, especially if you haven't been there. Because
so let me interrupt you there. So if we're talking about leaving from New England.
Yeah, if we're leaving from New England and we can't get back within the same day, I consider it a big trip. So it doesn't matter if it's Maine or if it's Italy. You put in the due diligence to figure out what you're doing and where you're going so that you have the best time possible. Because if you're having a terrible time and you can drive home that day, it's no big deal.
Right.
But you don't want to be having a terrible time and can't get away from it. You want to be somewhere that you're loving every moment or as much as you can so that it's worth the money and the time that you spent putting into it.
Let's shift gears a little bit to destinations. As we sit here in 2025, I think it's not cyclical yearly, but cyclical every few years, hot destinations come up. So where are we? What are some of the hot places here in 2025 or as we're looking at 2026?
When we think about our hot destinations, there's a lot that comes into play thanks to social media and new shows. So we've got some shows on Netflix right now where Paris and Rome are heavily featured. So they're places that people are looking at a lot right now. We also have a really, really big push with K-pop stuff. So with K-pop, the Korean pop music that thanks to...
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So people are fascinated with Korea?
Absolutely fascinated with Korea and Asia in general right now. And there are some phenomenal Southeast Asian destinations to go to that are really inexpensive, but you also have all of the draw of Korea and the street food markets and everything else that go into that too, along with, of course, the big music icons.
Right. But that's not easy to get to. So that's coming back to our earlier conversation about planning.
Yeah.
You need a lot of planning to go to Asia.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes we need to think about our length of time versus our financial more so. Because if the travel takes long enough, you're going to want to make sure that you have enough time there because where you're going to actually save money now is on your accommodations and your food and your events because the dollar goes further in those countries. Not always, but
Right,
oftentimes.
right.
If the travel that it takes to get to wherever your destination isn't that terrible, now you're thinking more about how much am I going to be wanting to spend financially and time-wise on my actual stay itself.
So in your world, is there a rule of thumb if you're traveling X amount of miles, you want to stay X amount of days? So I'm going to just arbitrarily pick England. England's about what, 5,000 miles from here, right? Give or take.
Honestly,
I'm
your guess
making
is
it
as
up.
good as mine.
Okay. But okay, so England isn't that far. It's
No.
really just across the Atlantic.
It's really
So,
not that bad. Yeah.
so you want to do 5 days, or so if we're talking Asia, which is probably a 18-hour flight, I have to imagine, you want to spend 10 days or 14 days. Do you have that sort of?
My rule of thumb is less about how long you're traveling for and more about how many time zones you're traveling through and therefore what your jet lag is going to be.
Okay.
Because you want to have enough time to acclimate and then actually enjoy where you are. So for England, it's really not that bad of a travel. You're going to leave first thing in the morning. By the time you arrive in England, it's going to be early afternoon. So if
Right.
you leave at like 6:30 in the morning, you're probably going to get in around 1 o'clock in the afternoon or so. And you've got the day to sort of get yourself through it, go to sleep. By the next day, you're probably going to be fine. Could
Right.
you do a long weekend there, like a 4-day? Absolutely. And you're going to enjoy at least 3 of those days
Right.
fully. If I'm going to Australia, because I'm changing several time zones, I'm going to want to make sure that I have a minimum of a week, ideally closer to 2, because it's going to take you some time to acclimate to where you are before
Right.
you actually start enjoying what you're doing. Now, that being said, I'm still going to be traveling for about 24 hours, whether I'm going from here to Australia on a flight or whether I'm driving from here to California, but I don't need to acclimate to time zone changes if I'm just doing that drive.
Right. Right. So the fewer time zones, or the more time zones you have to cross, the more time you want to spend at your destination.
Exactly. That's my general rule of thumb. That way, your body has time to acclimate so that you can thoroughly and fully enjoy whatever you've planned on doing. Also, I wouldn't plan any of your big must-dos within the first 24 hours of anywhere that you really do
You'll
have
sleep
to.
through them.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to make sure that you are ready for your big, big joyous moments, whatever it was that you
Right.
planned for that.
We are up on our first commercial break. We're talking about getting away and enjoying life. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of InFocus. Today, we're talking about getting away and spending some time traveling. Sara Hulseberg is across the desk from me in the 22 News Plus studios. Sara, thanks again for joining me. I love having travel conversations because when I was younger, I didn't have the funds to travel a lot. Kids are little. You just don't have that ability. And I didn't think about traveling much. Now, as I'm older, I'm realizing I probably should have done more traveling with my kids, which is kind of my next question. Was that which mentality was the right? Putting off traveling with kids because they're the kids and the stuff that goes with it, or should I have done more travel with my kids? Or does it? Every family's different.
Every family is different. Every family is different, and it depends on your finances. It depends on your workload. And it depends on who you are with your personality. I have a very good friend of mine from high school who she and her husband live abroad and they're both teachers and they go and they travel from country to country with their 3 young kids. I have other friends who have chosen to opt out of traveling with their children at all until their kids are 18 or older. I think that that's a bit pushing it in the far direction from where I would personally go. When I was still a professor, one of the biggest things I would tell my students when they would ask me for life advice was make sure that you take the opportunity now. And that's what I taught like graduate level students. So they're mostly in their early 20s. Make sure that you take the opportunity now to travel somewhere outside of your comfort zone and ideally alone so that you really get to discover where you are and find an appreciation for that place, but also learn a lot about yourself. When you're outside of your own comfort zone, learning about who you are somewhere is great. Giving your kids the opportunity to start getting acclimated and comfortable doing that when they're with you as a parent makes them much safer travelers as they get older because they start learning how to traverse the globe. But also, I
and
think
be
that it's
safe
wonderful.
and
Yeah, they
protect
learn
your
how to be
belongings.
safe. They know how to look at public transportation and start getting an understanding or a grasp of how to utilize it. And it gives them cultural awareness and understanding. And I think that that is a phenomenal thing that
Right.
it's really irreplaceable. We can't get it in very many other ways. And learning how to experience the world around you with an open mindset, it's wonderful.
And I think when part of Americans' problem with understanding the global population is where we live.
Yeah.
America, the United States is isolated. We've got Canada to the north, Mexico to the south, the Caribbean. We don't really have the opportunity like European countries or Asian countries that are smaller. And you could, I mean, literally, you can in a couple of hours, you can drive to a different country or take a train or a quick puddle jumper and be. So I think residents of foreign countries are more worldly, understanding world cultures.
Yeah.
Am I?
No, I would say that you're correct. The way that, at least a lot of Europeans that I'm still friends with from when I was traveling a lot in my younger days, they acclimate basically with their travel from country to country as our travel from state to state. And our states do have different cultures among them, but obviously it's not as big as having an entirely different language when you cross the border. Right. So,
although some people will say New Yorkers have their own language.
Yeah, that's or Rhode Island if you get them. But yeah, so we do have different cultures within our own country. It's not as profound as going from country to country when you're in Europe, which makes them a bit more flexible when it comes to adjusting to other people's worldviews than what the vast majority of Americans tend to be. But it is an opportunity that we have across our country, getting to drive from place to place and really experience things within our own country that Europeans don't get to have. Their countries are much smaller, so they don't have a full day's drive away and they're crossing 3 different states.
But again, to your point, and I didn't really think about it until you just made the comment, even just traveling within the United States, you'll experience culture.
Yeah.
And New England has its own type of culture. We joke about New York, New Jersey, but they have a different type of culture.
Yeah.
That's, even though it's 2.5, 3 hours away, it's close. And fortunately, you speak the same language, same currency, so it's not too difficult.
Yeah.
But even if you, as a parent, you don't have the means to take your family to Italy, Thailand, or wherever, just take a road trip.
Go somewhere else in the U.S. My family has a tradition where every 4th of July, we try and go somewhere different with our kids. So we've gone all over at this point. We've seen New Orleans. We've seen D.C.
Nice.
We went to Savannah just this past year. So you can take a little quick 1 or 2 hour flight. You can jump in the car and drive for half a day. And you can experience a different place with different food. Always try the local food.
Oh, absolutely.
Always try the local food.
The topography, like Savannah. I've never been to Savannah. It's on my list, but I have to imagine it's low country. It's low country near the water. It's a different type of terrain than we see here in Western Massachusetts.
Yeah. Even the trees and the foliage are different. Like the quantity of Spanish moss growing everywhere that just kind of hangs down, creates a whole different ambiance as you're walking through the cities than what you'll get in like Boston.
Right.
Also, I did not know this. I learned this while in Savannah. Supposedly, the closest plant, like familiar plant to Spanish moss, is a pineapple, and they look nothing alike. So you learn really cool and interesting things when you go into different areas like that.
That's fascinating.
It's weird,
right?
But,
it's interesting. I remember when I was younger, my father, when he was still alive, and obviously when I was younger, he would always talk about traveling the United States. He goes, I live here. There are so many places in the United States I've never seen. And as he and my mom aged, they would retire, and they would go everywhere. It was amazing, places that they would go. And I'd always say, why not go to Europe? And my father would say that there's so many places here in the States to see. You can't cover everything. There's no way.
There's a really, really rich culture throughout our country, all different cultures throughout our country.
Right.
And there are really, really rich and amazing cultures outside of our country, too. I think that the best is a combination. You try and choose the places that really sound interesting to you based on either your interests in your activities and what you enjoy, or on your food choices.
Or a food tour.
Yeah. You find
go to
something
Savannah
you're
on a food
passionate
tour.
about, and you go and you do it.
Right. we kind of got off track. So some of the popular destinations we mentioned earlier. I want to talk a little bit about traveling affordable travel. I guess is the way to phrase it. We talk about Thailand. It's going to be expensive, just the airfare, the hotels, and whatever. But there are ways to do it, no matter what your budget is. Correct.
So I lived in Thailand in my early 20s. It's a phenomenal country. I really love it. You're likely going to be.
So let me answer. In your early 20s, so you haven't established your career yet, but you were still able to pull it off.
Yeah, I actually flew from New England. I want to say it was out of JFK and over to London. And I made my way through the UK, through Western and Central Europe, then down to Southeast Asia. And it made it a lot less expensive for travel. And also I kind of stopped and worked along the way and make some money back.
Right.
But when I was in Thailand, you're going to fly into Bangkok. You're going to go see Phuket and the islands, and they're gorgeous. Wow. They're absolutely phenomenal. And really, once you get there, the flights truly are the most expensive. And that's a great rule of thumb in general when it comes to travel. Unless you're driving, and sometimes even then, depending on how far you're driving, your transportation is almost always going to be your most expensive chunk of what you're doing. From there, then it's your accommodation. And depending on how far the dollar goes, your accommodation may be significant or it may not really be that much at all. When I was living in Thailand, I had to find a place to live first. So I was staying in hotels. I was staying in 5-star resorts for, no joke, less than $5 a day.
$5 a day?
Granted, again, it was in my early 20s and it's been some time.
Right.
But
okay, so
the
even
dollar
if it's a
went
5-star at $100 a day, that's still cheap.
It's still really, it was very, very affordable to stay. And the food was even more affordable. So looking at how far your dollar will stretch beyond your transportation becomes really, really pertinent when we're trying to figure out budget travel. We want to be looking at not just what does it take to get there, what does it take to stay, but how much is it going to cost me once I'm actually there. Start shopping around for general food items and other necessities that you're going to be experiencing while you're there. And obviously, you're going to take that into consideration with the length of time that you're going to be spending there. Okay. So we had talked about time zones and making sure that we're making the most of our trip once we get through our travel. If you're limited and you're on a budget, make sure you're going somewhere where the dollar goes a heck of a lot further than somewhere where it's not going to go nearly as far, so that when you're there for that longer period of time, you're not breaking your budget in being there. Also, choose places that you can kind of bop around. So let's go back to our Thailand example. We talked about Bangkok. We talked about Phuket. You can go to Pattaya, which is sort of more like a port city. But you can also just hop on another one of those little itty bitty puddle jumper planes and head over to Cambodia. And there's Siem Reap right there. There's also Angkor Wat, which is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. It was phenomenal. One of the best experiences of my life, getting to see all of that history right there in front of you and trying to conceptualize just how ancient it is.
Oh, I know.
It makes you feel so
living in
so
the States, it's hard to
but at the same
get your
time,
head around that.
Exactly, because we're such a new country in comparison, But it's a phenomenal experience. So if you're trying to make the most of your travel on a budget, you want to choose centralized locations that your dollar will go further once you're present, or making the most out of your dollar, having a short amount of time and a short amount of travel distance as well.
Very good. We are up on our second commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. Across the desk for me today is a travel specialist with We Do Travel Right, Sara Hulseberg. Thank you, Sara, for joining me. We've covered a lot of ground in traveling over the first couple of conversations in today's show. The last thing I really want to get to is we started out with some of the trips or the destinations that are top of mind or popular now, looking at 2026. How far, I kind of teased this earlier, how far in advance should we be planning something for next year?
Yeah. So in general, I always recommend planning a minimum of 3 months out. Right?
Minimum 3 months.
Minimum
Okay.
3 months out. Ideally closer to 6, especially if we're looking at international travel.
Is that because of airfare and reservations?
A lot of it's
Or-
because of airfare and
Okay.
reservations. You're going to get better prices that way. It's also going to give you a little bit more leniency to start figuring out what you want to be doing. And there is so much that we can be doing. And like we were saying, any trip that you can't come home from immediately is a big trip as far as I'm
Right.
concerned. And I want people to have the best possible time that they can. So taking the time to think about and learn about where you're going to be going so we know what to prioritize. That's a really big part of it. There's a lot that you can do, and when you only have a limited amount of time, you want to make sure that the things that you're choosing to spend your time and money on are going to be the best possible things for you and your family or whoever's traveling with you.
One of my rules in my own personal travel is if I'm doing a big trip, I try not to make the plans to come home the day before I have to be back to work.
Yeah.
I always say, I want at least a full day back home, laundry, you cut the grass, whatever it might be, but not to come home and then get up and go to work the next morning, especially if it's international travel. Then your time clock, your body clock is thrown all off.
Not only is your body clock thrown off, but if you have a delay, if something happens with your luggage, there's just too much stress around it. And if you want to return back in a nice, smooth kind of transition, normally recommend about 24 hours, 36 hours minimum of getting back and going into work. I mean, obviously, if you have the opportunity to have a once-in-a-lifetime trip, I've got 3 women right now who are going to be going chasing after the Aurora Borealis this winter.
Oh, my dream.
It's going to be so amazing. We planned a phenomenal trip for them. They literally have 4 days.
Wow.
So we packed as much as we could in, and they're getting back and going back to work the next day, and it's going to kind of stink.
Right.
But they're absolutely making the most of their time, and they're going
Sometimes it
to have
happens,
a lifelong memory.
Right.
So when you have the opportunity between not getting to do the amazing thing or getting to do it, skimp out on that extra time and go and do the thing, get the story. But when given the opportunity, take the 24 to 36 hour minimum so that you can kind of reacclimate to being back home and settle back into work without feeling like you just got hit by a Mack truck.
Because you have to consider time changes and whatnot. Looking at trips, you said 3 to 6 months out. What about those last minute deals? You get these emails. I get them all the time. It's like, hey, Iceland for $399, for 4 nights. Are those worth it?
Most of the time, you're not really saving anything.
Okay.
Typically, they're just trying to make it sound like you're going to save something. That being said, if you see a deal pop up, it's within your budget, and you have the capacity to take that trip because spontaneity is something that works in your life, do it. If it's working in your budget right now and you have the opportunity, go and make the memory. Are you going to be all that concerned that you saved $10 versus $100 once you've come back and made that memory? Not really, no.
It's interesting. What I've said to my kids is the material items will wear, fade, and you'll end up getting rid of them. But memories you'll always have. Yeah. And nowadays I don't have my cell phone in here, but we have your phones. You're able to take photos of every single thing. So that keeps your memories alive.
I love it. It's making those core memories. My family has been saying core memories since before the movie came out that has that in that Pixar, whatever that movie is. Okay. But making the core memory has always revolved around experiences, shared experiences. I think it was Oscar Wilde said that happiness isn't happiness unless it's shared. And so we have a lot of things in our lives where we try to share it either with our family, with each other, with people we love, or by making new memories and experiencing new things with new people. And when you go out into the world and you get the opportunity to openly share experiences and make those core memories, those are the stories worth telling. I want to be an octogenarian that has stories worth listening to.
Absolutely.
And the only way we get there is to live those experiences. Right. So if we have the chance,
whether it's locally or abroad.
Exactly. If you've got a last minute trip that you can take, whether it's up to a B&B in Maine or whether it's to the Galapagos, go and do it.
Absolutely. Sara Hulseberg, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. What a wonderful travel conversation. Now I got the travel bug. I got to go somewhere. Good seeing you.
We're on it. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.